Welcome into Seattle Seahawks today. I am Tom Downey, and we're going to talk about some potential Carlos Dunlap replacements. The news, as I'm sure most of you guys heard because you're already subscribed to the channel and got the notification, the Seahawks have released defensive end Carlos Dunlap. He had a non-guaranteed about $14.1 million base salary. That does not mean Dunlap is forever done being a Seahawk, which we'll discuss, hint, later on. He might come back in some capacity. But the Seahawks were not going to pay Dunlap $14 million. That's why they did not franchise tag Shaquille Griffin or Chris Carson. They are up against the salary cap. That was more than what they wanted to pay Dunlap for one individual year, so they made the choice to release him. Doing so, however, opens up a significant need at the defensive end position, where Dunlap came over from the Cincinnati Bengals, part of a fantastic trade. B.J. Finney in a seventh? Oh, man, they'll do that trade every single chance they get, right? But it does open up a need because the team lost, I think, their most impactful pass rusher, outside of Jamal Adams, by the way. Benson Mayowa was good, make no mistake. He's also a free agent. Oh, dear. So even if you bring back Benson Mayowa, you're looking at some internal options we'll dive more into here in a second that aren't fully proven yet, and that is a bit of a potential red flag for this organization. Now, we're going to do a bunch of different free agency videos this offseason. Different positions, replacements, targets, news, all of it. So if you want to stay updated with what's going on around the Seahawks, hit that big red button and subscribe today. Let's move to Darrell Taylor. Some internal options for this team, right? This is the ideal one. The problem is the team's second-round pick last year out of Tennessee did not play, which makes it very difficult to trust him, to say, yes, this guy's going to be our guy, because we haven't seen him. So he's going to be a rookie in some capacity, and now you're wondering, okay, is he going to be able to make the impact for you? That remains unclear. LJ Collier was better in 2020. The first-round pick out of TCU was bad his first season. Even assuming a breakout, that's still somebody you probably want to reduce inside, kick inside, and play some defensive tackle on passing downs. So that helps you on third down, but then what are you doing at edge? So I like Collier. I think he can be better this year. He doesn't quite fill that need, though. Maybe it could be Alton Robinson, the rookie out of Syracuse, who had 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, a couple flash plays, a couple flash games, not fully consistent yet, wasn't a key cog in terms of being the number one rotation guy, and, of course, lost some reps to Carlos Dunlap. So I think for Seattle, give those internal options a chance. I think you have to add a defensive end. So should Seattle add one here? Get your votes in for me. 1 for yes, 0 for no. I'm going to make this question, actually, the pinned comment on today's video. So to get that ad break here on YouTube, scroll on down and get your votes in. Yannick Ngakoue kicks off our free agency options of potential Carlos Dunlap replacements. The big name, the sexy name, if you will, has had at least 8 sacks in all 5 of his seasons as a member of the Jags and then also the Ravens / Minnesota Vikings, right? Does not turn 26 until the end of March. Was linked preseason with some various trade rumors around the Seahawks and getting an edge rusher. The problem here, and why I think it's unlikely, even though it would be a dream option, he's going to be highly coveted. And he's also going to be expensive, which means for Seattle, can you throw big money? Can you throw $18, $20 million a year at Yannick Ngakoue, given your needs on the offensive line? I kind of think no. Aldon Smith is up here now. The Seahawks had trade interest in him this last year at the trade deadline. Of course, they chose to make the move for Carlos Dunlap instead. I'm unconvinced Smith ends up returning to the Dallas Cowboys, which means he shouldn't be as expensive in the end as other options. Now, you do have to wonder which Aldon Smith you'll end up getting. The first 5 games, Aldon Smith, where he was dominant and also just abused the Seahawks offensive line to the tune of 3 sacks, or the majority of the year, Aldon Smith, who wasn't as good and is part of a defense that could not stop the run, therefore teams did not throw against him. His pressure rate plummeted, his production plummeted as well. I think somewhere in the middle. And depending on the cost, I think Aldon Smith might be the perfect blend of efficiency, of cost, and fit for this Seattle Seahawks team to go out, spend a little bit less on a defensive end, and still get a good player to help them out, and one we also know the team clearly likes. So name a free agent that you believe the Seahawks should add at defensive end. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. A Carlos Dunlap replacement is Carlos Dunlap. Allow me to explain here as we have some fun. The Seahawks want him back for this upcoming season. They want to find a way to make that happen. It just has to be at a cheaper cost. So what Seattle is allowing Carlos Dunlap to do is explore the free agency market, which I think is going to be kind of weird this year in an unknown and down salary cap season. So, if the market isn't too strong, if it's not quite what Dunlap was hoping for, I think a return back to Seattle on a, let's say, 2-year, 23, 30, somewhere in that range type of deal, I think actually does make some sense. It just depends on what the market ends up looking like for Carlos Dunlap. His old teammate, Carl Lawson, a couple years ago, I was all aboard finding a way to add Shaq Barrett. I loved him as a free agency target. I wanted teams to go get him. The Bucs did, and then Barrett was way better than I thought he was ever going to be. Carl Lawson is my Shaq Barrett type of target this year. A better situation, better team, better defense, all that stuff. I think he could approach 8+ sacks. I think he could approach 10 sacks. Now, we'll see just how much he costs. Barrett signed for $6 million a year, or $6 million on a one-year deal a couple years ago. What does Lawson generate on the open market? If it's under 8, if I'm Seattle, I think I'm all over this guy, which is also why I think many NFL teams should be all over him. Another veteran name, Ryan Kerrigan, coming off his worst year from a statistical standpoint. Remember, he was linked, more so through rumors than actual trade talks, to Seattle at last year's NFL trade deadline. He fits that Carlos Dunlap mold where he kind of fell out of favor because the Washington football team has a guy named Chase Young and Montez Sweat, so Kerrigan was kind of more of a rotational piece. Get him up and to up his snap counts, he could be another 6-7 sack guy. He's put up at least 5.5 sacks every year. That's his worst year, was 5.5 sacks. Man, for some of these guys, that's like a career year. So if the money's right, if he wants to leave Washington, yeah, sign me up on that one. To a name I know you guys were going to ask about, so I had to include it. Jadeveon Clowney, who was bad with the Titans and has struggled in recent years with the same issue of he generates pressures, but he can't finish, and that's an issue. And yes, by the way, if he still wants a big-time contract, out. No interest there whatsoever. He has to come in significantly less than any of the guys we kind of mentioned outside of maybe Ryan Kerrigan because they're both, well, Kerrigan's old. Frankly, I think given what Clowney did in Seattle, what he did in Tennessee, probably makes sense for both sides to look elsewhere, but I want to give you guys a chance to get your votes in here. What would you guys do? Do you want to bring back Clowney? If it's cheap, I always say yes. Beyond that, maybe not. So get your votes in for me. Y for yes or N for no. Some other names I wanted to mention here, at least briefly. Tyus Bowser of the Baltimore Ravens, under the radar guy, kind of in that Carl Lawson mold. Hassan Reddick from the Arizona Cardinals. Trey Hendrickson from the Saints. Leonard Floyd from the Rams. All either first-round picks or a third-round pick in Henderson's case, who just had a major breakout year. What's their market going to look like? If they're the right cost, bring them in. And then another aging veteran, Justin Houston, could be a good fit, much like Melvin Ingram of the Chargers as well. We're going to get to draft options here, but first, hey, it's March Madness, folks. So if you want to bet on basketball, make some money, even if your bracket starts to fall apart, go do a BetUS. Chatsports.com/bet. Use the promo code you see on screen. That is Seahawks125. It'll get you 125% deposit bonus. Just remember to use that URL, chatsports.com/bet. To the draft now. How about Boogie Basham? Elite name, Carlos Basham out of Wake Forest there. Bigger type of defensive end. He can kick inside. And that phrase is something I think Seahawks fans have become accustomed to. They like those type of players. They're always trying to chase the Michael Bennett type, which, I think understandably so. And I didn't play that much this year because, well, COVID was a factor, right? I don't think he's going to be a true double-digit type of sack player in the NFL. I also don't know if he's there for Seattle in round 2. If he is, though, given what Seattle historically has liked, I think Basham would be a logical fit to come in. You can rotate with LJ Collier and Rasheem Green and still kick those guys onto the interior on third downs. Now, if you want more of a undersized, athletic, that more Leo, Bruce Irvin type, not quite as a pure linebacker, of course, as Irvin could have been and was at times in his NFL career, about Ronnie Perkins from Oklahoma. Producer Sam loves him because he's a homer. But Perkins is a more under-the-radar prospect right now. Now, he did miss 6 games due to a failed drug test in 2020, and that is kind of a significant big deal right there. But when he was out there, he was impressive. There's a rep of him beating Tevin Jenkins, not with speed, but with power, with a long arm move. That matters in the NFL. Now, he's a bit inconsistent still, but if he's there in round 2, if you want a bendier, more athletic edge, I think Perkins does make some sense. So name one for me. Maybe it's someone I haven't even mentioned here at this point. What defensive end prospect do you want the Seattle Seahawks to draft? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Going local now, Joe Tryon out of Washington, who opted out of the 2020 season. I think he could be a pretty decent fit for the Seattle Seahawks. He is not a finished product by any means. Last time we saw him, though, 12.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. There's some divisiveness in terms of how he's viewed in the NFL scouting community. I don't want to touch him in round 1. We start getting to round 2, the back end. Okay, I think this is the right range, just like I think Basham is a perfect range for Seattle. Let's go to Rashad Weaver out of Pitt, who fits the Basham mold of, I think he's a base defensive end who could also kick inside. He wins with some length and some good power, and he's been productive at Pitt. 28 tackles for loss, 14 sacks over the past 2 seasons. Now, I think there are some potential athletic limitations as it relates to the next level. I don't know how often he's going to win as an edge rusher, which is a concern, winning with speed as an edge rusher. But the production's intriguing. In round 2, he fits the mold of what Seattle likes. I think he's a name to keep an eye out for. Quincy Roche next up here. I think probably a bit of a reach in round 2, but I wanted to mention some guys who I think would be there. 54 tackles for loss in 4 seasons. That's pretty crazy. Now, he spent most of that time at Temple, played 1 year at Miami, and maybe it wasn't a huge surprise, but especially as a pass rusher, Roche simply wasn't as good. He did not win as well. That should not be a huge surprise. So if you start to get into, maybe it's more round 3 and less of a round 2 option, or if you trade back and move down, if he's there somehow in round 4, I think Roche could actually make some sense. So how would you prefer to replace Carlos Dunlap? Type D if you want a draft pick, type F if you want to go sign a free agent, or type in I for you actually don't think there is a need and you think the internal options make sense for Seattle. I did want to wrap up here with just 5 names to watch out for as well, bonus names. Joseph Asai, I think he goes before the Seahawks pick. I'm not as high on him. If he's there in round 2, sign me up. Peyton Turner from Houston, bit of a sleeper option there. Rashad Weaver's teammate, Patrick Jones from Pitt. And then 2 lesser-known guys from smaller Power 5 schools. Hamilcar Rashed Jr., the bendy athletic edge from Oregon State. And then a bigger body, Dayo Odangbo out of Vanderbilt, an elite name in this year's class.